give us a little bit of insight on how you're making 4 different in the movie versus how he's written on the page.
How it's different? Well, I would say how on the page there is more room to play with. What we needed to do with the movie was make his arc very clear, because you know in the book you have more space to play with moments of touching or moments of where they come together and come apart, come together and come apart. And there is certainly an element of that, but because you're telling the story through a shorter period of time in the movie, the arc had to have a little more clarity. So, for example. But as a result, I think it's really great because what happens is they meet, they have natural chemistry, they're bonded. But then he is quite closed and an abrasive person, and also they are kind of have this fractious relationship. So it kind of builds, and then at the end, or near the end, kind of from the Ferris wheel scene on, really, they begin to fall for each other, but not in a kind of sweeping, obvious romantic way, in a very loving, kind of strong and complex way.
Can you talk a little bit about shooting the Ferris wheel scene?
Yeah, it was really fun. Shay was a natural up there. She was like a monkey just jumping around. Even though she said she's scared of heights. I don't think they're scared of heights. But it was good. It was very cold, so I remember my hands almost sticking to the rungs of the ladder when we were climbing up there. But we were up there for about 3.5 hours, I think, at the end. So it's a really great scene because it's actually one of my favourite lines in the whole book. Is when she says, he's on the Ferris wheel and he stops, and she said, "What, are you afraid?" And he says, "Yeah, of course I'm afraid. No one could be fearless, basically."
Yeah.
Which I think is a really strong masculine message because you should be able to be honest about your weaknesses as well as you should be honest and say yes, of course, because no one is. Having false bravado about being fearless is kind of pointless. So I think that shows his emotionality and his honestness, which to me makes him a stronger and more masculine character.
All right. So in the book, the character's love story is not that weird. There's an age difference, but it's only 2 years. There's obviously a wider gap between you and Shailene.
I'm 47.
You look great.
A great surgeon.
Do they age the character up, or either character up or down?
No, because I think naturally Shay and I's chemistry, I think that's partly why it works, is I'm a little bit older, but then Shay's quite mature for her age, so the gap isn't wide anyway, but there's a little obvious gap because I'm older than her. But really for me, he doesn't play as an 18-year-old, he plays as a kind of mixture of ages. Like, he's definitely not a 28-year-old, but he is a man, and I think he has the composition of a man in terms of his settled nature. So I like to think of, like, and I've said this a few times, Paul Newman had that quality when he was young. He was still young, but he had a masculinity kind of beyond his years, and I do think that is the way with Thor. So it wasn't like I needed to age him down, I just needed to play him as real as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, when you're an actor, obviously you try and connect with the parts of the character that are similar to yourself, because I believe that's a good way of creating realism. So, I didn't specifically age him down.
Right. Well, I like that you compared yourself to Paul Newman.
I didn't compare myself. I compared the character.
Oh, you can. That's fine. I totally see it.